hoping for the best, but expecting the worst. Are you gonna drop the bomb or not?
Welcome to Business Game Changers. I'm Sarah Westall. I have Dr. Armin Kirshnan coming to the program. He is a professor who teaches fifth generation warfare. He just doesn't not just teach fifth generation warfare. He teaches intelligence, security. He teaches military students, intelligence students. He is an expert in this area from a military and political perspective. And we are going to talk about what the heck is fifth generation warfare, and also how does the deep state tie into that? Who's behind it? Hi, Armin. Welcome to the program. Well, you are an expert on fifth generation warfare. You teach it at the university level. You teach intelligence students. I mean, first of all, talk about what you do.
Well, I'm an academic at East Carolina University. I'm the director of security studies there, and I teach American foreign policy, international security, and intelligence studies. And my research focuses mostly on military technology and also future of war. Fifth generation warfare is very different from Clausewitzian warfare. So the objective is no longer political. It's no longer focused on the kinetic aspect of war. So it's very much focused on psychological manipulation, psychological warfare, deception, social engineering, and these days also what is called cognitive warfare. So that also involves the manipulation of the brain, as well as the manipulation of culture. So you could affect the culture of a society by changing the composition of the society. So that would all fall into fifth generation warfare, which is fought in the human domain. So that is not a physical domain. That is the domain of social relationships, of narratives, and of culture and values. So that's where the main hostilities take place. And the objective is not to destroy the enemy armed forces. That's no longer important. The military is no longer very important to fifth generation warfare. What matters is really affecting the population in a way that is conducive to the goals of the belligerents. And what is very interesting about fifth generation warfare is that it is not apparent to many people that it's actually happening. So that is a very big problem in terms of studying fifth generation warfare, because people are not aware that there is a war. And if they are aware that there is a war and they are under attack, they don't know where the attack is coming from, who is responsible for it, and what is the ultimate goal of it. The way I understand fifth generation warfare is that it is about changing the societal order in a massive way. So it is about the destruction of the state and the creation of a totally new social order. And that order would no longer be political. So it would be something that has been called technocracy or scientific dictatorship. So that would be a very radical change. And it would also mean that governments would no longer matter. So we would be moving towards a world government and some sort of federation of private interests and institutions that exercise control over populations. What fifth generation warfare does is to use proxies, to manipulate subgroups in society for a hidden purpose. So they are using communists and communist ideology as a way of facilitating larger societal change, in particular destabilizing the government and society, which makes it possible to bring in a totally new order. So when that new order appears, communism is no longer going to matter in that way, at least not in the form it was conceived in the 19th century with Karl Marx and so on. It's going to be something that can be called neo-feudalism. So we have new feudal lords ruling over us. So these would be the so-called elites, so the super rich. who can control tremendous resources across the world and who can or will be able to exercise tremendous control over individuals and societies at large using technology.
That's right.
So there's a lot of advanced technology that is being brought in to facilitate that kind of level of control. And ultimately, it's going to destroy the governments and the political class as well.
It's going to destroy our whole way of life.
And the way it works is that people, individuals, and organizations get co-opted. So they're using financial incentives, they're using ideology, and they're using identity for achieving a level of cooperation that facilitates what they want to do in the end. So there are lots of useful idiots. So people who act on behalf of those belligerents without having any understanding what it is they are helping to do. So they don't understand the final goals of the whole thing, but they are willing to participate in it because they think that it will lead to some better society, for example, or they believe that they can make a lot of money out of it. So it benefits themselves, benefits their families, and that's the reason why they're in it. But ultimately, when the new social order is brought about, they are no longer important, and they could be actually a problem. And as we've seen in the case of communist regimes, when they were brought in by useful idiots, and those useful idiots were eliminated.
That's right.
Because they no longer serve the purpose. So imagine that this would happen as well to those who are facilitating the destruction of our society.
Although they've used a lot of these techniques all through history, they've just became very good at it, right? And it's a lot more sophisticated with higher level technology and methods that they've proven out over decades.
Well, they are using the behavioral sciences to study how people respond to certain stimuli, how groups respond to certain stimuli, and then they provide these stimuli to move society in a certain direction. So they have a very good understanding of the human psyche and human behavior. And they are collecting a lot of data on individuals. So that is done on a massive scale. So there is a file on every one of us. So it includes everything about our health, our social contacts, our shopping behavior, our consumption, our interests, our political orientation, sexual orientation, everything. And that can be used for targeted messaging, so to manipulate particular groups in a certain way, shape their perceptions in a way, and then produce desired behaviors. And what I think is happening is the destabilization of society and the government. And that is ultimately not beneficial for us, for the population at large. Since fifth generation warfare takes place in the human domain, we need to take control of the human terrain. We need to take control over the narratives. We need to use information as a weapon, as information is used as a weapon against us. And we need to be aware of efforts to undermine our identity or to play one identity against another identity.
Who the heck is the deep state? And then I want to know why.
So the deep state is an aspect of the military-industrial complex. So that is mostly the intelligence services. So the deep state is really a government within a government. So there is some antagonism between the elected government and the deep state that we've seen during the Trump administration. So what we have is a situation where the elected government pretends to be in charge of the national security apparatus, and the national security apparatus pretends to obey the commands from the elected government. But it's it's a theater. Elected government has lost control over the national security apparatus. They operate with very little accountability. But now we have a different kind of problem with the deep state. The deep state seems to have been subverted by outside interests. So it seems that the deep state has been infiltrated by people who have a political, or they have a different agenda. They don't want to protect the national security. They want to facilitate the destruction of society and the government. So you can't see, you cannot consider the deep state as something that is very uniform anymore. I think there are conflicts going on within it. So what we have is a case of infiltration and subversion. So they managed to subvert certain elements of the deep state, and possibly people in high-level positions have been compromised or co-opted to serve outside interests, so interests outside of the government, what can be called the shadow government. So it's important to understand that there's a distinction between the shadow government on the one hand and the deep state on the other hand. So the deep state is really portions of the national security state that have acquired some level of autonomy. And the shadow government is a group outside of the government that can reach into the government. So they have infiltrated the government and they can influence the government at a high level. And it's unclear who exactly is the shadow government, but a good guess is that it's the oligarchs. So we've seen that in other countries. So what I've studied is the Soviet Union and the end of the Soviet Union at the creation of the new Russia, when the oligarchs effectively took over control of the government in Russia using organized crime for amassing tremendous amounts of wealth and exercising tremendous amounts of influence. So we are seeing potentially a similar kind of thing, that we have some group outside of the government comprised of oligarchs, so people who can be called super empowered individuals who have access to tremendous amounts of resources, financial and technological, and who have managed to co-opt certain parts of our government, especially the deep state, in order to facilitate what they want to achieve in the end, which is a radical transformation of society and the political order.
And they say it openly, right? I mean, the central bankers say it openly. They say it openly at their Jackson Hole meetings. They say it openly. It's not hidden. So these oligarchs are not necessarily U.S.-based oligarchs. It's the oligarchs that are wealthiest in the world who are coming in and corrupting our deep state. General Valley I did an interview with him, and he said that maybe the government the elected government has 15% say now on what's going on. Yeah,
that is a big concern, that a lot of powerful people have been co-opted, and a lot of decision-making has been shifted outside of the government. So these are the public-private partnerships that exist, and it has moved more and more in the direction of private interests controlling a lot of what the government is doing. So that is very concerning, that the governments are losing their ability to make laws and to enforce laws because of this kind of undermining of the constitutional order.
So what is that aspect? That has to be part of the fifth generation warfare, just completely disenfranchising the people.
Yep. So I think the real power has shifted from the government to outside interests. So these are private organizations that ultimately belong to the oligarchs. And one of those organizations you already mentioned, that's the Federal Reserve, so central bank digital currencies, and that could be a global currency system that they want to roll out with a unified ledger operated by the Bank for International Settlements I think in Geneva. And this means that they could program the money, that people can spend it only on certain things, but not on other things. And it can be done individually, and it can be used in conjunction with artificial intelligence. So it can use a social credit score as an input.
Well, and it doesn't even benefit them because they're creating a hell world and they still have to live in it too.
Well, I think they potentially think that they can insulate themselves. So there's the idea of a breakaway society. So you have a separate society for the elites where they enjoy all the technology and all the conveniences. And then you have another society for the whole rest of the world, which would be hell on earth.
The slave class, which they're trying to depopulate us to a certain number, the slave class to a certain number they can control, and then they can live high on the hog. Is there a turning point? Are we starting to see within their ranks, in your opinion, of them fighting with each other on this not necessarily being the correct path for humanity?
Well, I think we could be reaching a point when their system is becoming too dysfunctional. So everything breaks down and they can't get it all together again. So that is a huge possibility, and that they have gambled on a particular outcome, and they may not be able to pull it off.
But we can keep helping their paradigm collapse by informing people, right? I mean, because that's all we have. And then people inside those organizations who have power can help mess it up and help it collapse.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we've seen those kinds of collapses happen with the collapse of communism in Eastern Europe. The only difference we have is artificial intelligence and other technologies that the elites are gambling on would make it unnecessary to control the people at the top. So they would be simply replacing them, replacing the politicians and the government with technical control systems. So that's what they are trying to do, bring in technical control systems and get rid of the people who could make a difference.
That's right. And like the transgender stuff, that obviously we need to protect children, but that is a clear fifth generation warfare tactic. Get everybody focused on something. It's horrifying for kids to go through when they don't need it, transgender surgery. But that's a clear fifth generation warfare tactic.
Yeah, you're changing the culture in the society. And it also ties in with transhumanism. So the idea that you can modify your body to become something better than human. So it's tied to the idea of evolution, and that we can better ourselves in terms of our genetics, our appearance, our health, our longevity, our smartness, and everything else we want using technology. And in the end, it's a means of controlling people.
They care what happens to themselves. So they're going to be using technology like longevity technology so they can live longer. They're going to be using frequency and help to get their brain so they can have better memory. They're going to learn things quicker. But the rest of us are getting shoved down our throat technology that is just maybe experimental, and they don't care.
Well, I mean, there is a general problem in the development of human enhancement technologies. You have to do a lot of human experimentation in order to make it work.
That's right.
And obviously, elites don't want to experiment on themselves, and they prefer to experiment on other people first, and then wait until the technology is so mature that they can use it for themselves, for their purposes. So to, in fact, become smarter and live longer. So they have to conduct a lot of human experimentation, and it's sometimes unethical experimentation, so without asking for the consent of people, or without disclosing all the information about the nature of the experimentation and about the risks involved.
Isn't that the nature of technocracy? The scientific inquiry of technocracy is to experiment on the classes that aren't as, in their minds, aren't as useful.
Yeah, obviously, and that is the underlying ideology of technocracy, so that there is an elite group who are really the important ones in society, the only ones that matter, and everybody else is at a lower level. They are some kind of subhuman. They are not as evolved, and that gives the elites the right, in their mind, to use the regular people for their purposes. Well, I think that there is an ideology among the elites where they see themselves as the good guys. They want to advance humanity. They think that the current level of humanity is deficient. We are not as perfect as we should be. And they think that they have not only the right, but the duty to advance humanity. They are using people for accomplishing their goals, and they don't care about the consequences because they think that the future would be so good that it wouldn't matter.
And it's a philosophical conversation that we're going to have to address this head on, but they're not allowing us to address it head on because they're suppressing the conversations too.
Yes, they're definitely using deception with respect to what the ultimate goal is. I mean, I can clearly see it with respect to the whole topic of world government. On the one hand, you can say this could be a good idea. On the other hand, there's a big question as to how it would be implemented and who would control it.
Well, and we watched it a little bit, right? We watched how they implemented COVID around the world, and now we're watching how they're dealing with the ramifications of COVID. We're saying, well, if this is what you guys are about, we don't want any part of this. So the last thing we want to do is give them that kind of power to destroy businesses, to destroy lives, and then not take responsibility when people are dying. We can't afford to give that kind of power away.
Yeah, I think the general public is being deceived about the current state of affairs as it concerns political globalization. I think we've seen an incipient world government during the COVID pandemic.
That's right.
I mean, it's pretty amazing that pretty much every country in the world adopted the same kind of policies in rapid succession. So there was very little disagreement. I mean, it would have made sense if the policies were wise. As we know now, many of those policies, such as social distancing or the masking or the vaccinations and the lockdowns, all of that was just invented. There was not much scientific basis behind any of it. And there's a question to be asked. Why would all the governments in the world not only go crazy about COVID-19, but go crazy in the exact same fashion?
Why in the world would we give our power up to people that do that? You know what I mean? It's like, that's the last thing we want to give our power up to. So, and then they won't let us have conversations on why that's about the dumbest thing we could possibly do for our family and for our survival. But they don't care, right? I mean, that's not their goals. It almost seems with fifth generation warfare, they want us to be disenfranchised and disillusioned with this, to create more chaos and to destroy I don't know, are they that smart? You know what I mean?
They have a vision of the final destination. They have a clear idea where they want to take us. And they see that there are certain obstacles in the way. And one of those obstacles are national governments. They have to destroy the governments as they now exist in order to bring about the world government, which I don't think would be democratic and which would be controlled by a very small group of people pursuing their own interests and pursuing an ideology which is contradictory to everything we may believe in as regular people in the West.
That's right.
Which is based on individuality and individual freedom and free markets and things like that. So they have to change the culture.
Are they winning, and what do we need to do to continue to fight this?
Yeah, I don't think that there is much support for any of those ideas of the elites. So if they came out and explained it to people what they really wanted to do, and there would be almost no support for that in the
Zero.
public.
Yeah, almost none.
Yeah, absolutely. So it only works as long as they can disguise their true agenda, their true objectives, and the final goal, the vision of society that they have. They have to keep it hidden from everybody in order to persuade people to go along step by step. So it's a gradual approach. So they're moving us gradually towards the end goal. And they are gradually destroying, collapsing society and the economic structure in order to create a situation where there is no alternative but their vision. And they want to tighten the control with technical control systems. And they have already sidelined many of the governments. So that's how they envision they can be successful. What I think is more likely to happen, and I don't know what is going to happen, obviously, but what I think is going to happen is that they will lose control as things break down. Well, the thing with fifth generation warfare is that it's a protracted war. It's a long war. So we cannot expect that the war would be won or lost within a few years. This is something that is going on for decades. Maybe we won't see the end of it. So that's quite possible. And yeah, we can only hope that in the end, humanity will prevail. So the human spirit will survive, and that we can overcome those crazy ideas of people who seem to have gained tremendous amounts of power and influence around the world, and who are very determined to bring about their vision of what they think is a better world, and which would be a nightmare for everybody else. Well, I think what we need to embrace is technologies of decentralization. Anything that empowers the individual and makes the individual less dependent on the system. So that's the only way of defeating it, or if not defeating, but at least maintain some level of freedom and self-determination. There is no political solution to the problem. We cannot hope that one political candidate becomes president and suddenly everything would be solved. And that is totally delusional. The only thing we can do is fight on the cultural and informational front. Increase our or reduce our dependency on the system. Yeah, I mean, we need to use their weapons against them. It's like guerrilla warfare.
That's right.
But it's happening in the informational space and in the cultural space. So we need to try to occupy more of the human terrain and shape the human terrain to our advantage, and try to evade the technical control systems as much as possible, because that would be the next step. That's the next card. And that would be the sixth generation warfare, using the technical control systems and potentially even collapsing technical systems in order to collapse society and force change this way. So that is something we need to be aware of. Fifth generation warfare is not the end of the story, perhaps.
Yeah, the sixth generation is the control grid, the electrical supply, the taking down our entire system, and then
Yeah,
starving
exactly.
people out that way or something. So thank you so much.